Change my shoes even. Hey, welcome live to Content Marketing World Chatter. I'm Tim Washer, and we have Jenny Dietrich here as our very first. That is nice. That was kind of a. Thank you for being here.
Oh my gosh, it's my pleasure.
We have been. It took us like to get you here.
For heaven's sakes, it did
So
not.
it was very difficult, but we're glad you finally agreed, and we're glad we can
He's
get the money
joking.
together for her. So
Yeah,
we're really
that's
happy
right.
about that.
Yeah.
Let me start off with an embarrassing question. I understand Netflix has bought the rights to bring. Can you talk about that?
I cannot.
Are you guys filming yet? or-
I'm not allowed to talk about it.
Okay.
I'm under NDA.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Well, you did such a good job in the first run. We thought you were a brilliant actor. You really committed to the role, and you had a passion like we haven't seen probably since Laura Ingalls Wilder on Little House on the Prairie.
Oh, my favorite show.
Yes.
Yeah, it's my
yes.
favorite show.
So that was good work.
Thank you.
I want to talk to you. Can we move into business now
Yes,
that we
we
got your
can.
vanity play out of the way?
Jeez.
Let's talk about hope as a strategy.
Oh, all right.
Tell me about. You have to say business owners about hope as a strategy.
Hope is not a strategy, as we continue to thunder. Hope is not a strategy, and I think one of the things that business owners tend to do, especially in art, we're going to do $500,000 this year, or $100,000, or whatever happens to be $10 million, or whatever our goals are, but we have no plan to get there. We just hope that we'll get the referrals or the word of mouth that come in through friends and acquaintances and former clients to help us get to that goal. It comes November and we didn't get there because we used hope as a strategy instead of an actual plan.
So how do you, as an agency or owner, how do you go about putting things in place to put a little concrete around these ideas?
Well, it's not anything different than what we do for clients or for any other organization. You have to create a plan, and we do a ton of work with agency owners. Most agency owners do not have a plan. They do great work for clients. They do.
So is that like the cobbler's kids has no shoes?
Yeah,
Is
totally.
what, like in your book, do you think about to get over that hump? Here's the first thing you need to think about when you start.
Have to, I read a story about Bill Gates years ago, and he has a cabin in the woods somewhere, and he takes his business, or used to, not anymore. But he just worked on the business. Work on your business, not just in it. And if you don't make that time, and half a day a week, you take Friday afternoons, although Fridays tend to be, I'm just gonna go ride my bike, or maybe it's create that discipline to work on the business, and then you can eventually start to increase it.
Part of that's just scheduling, I imagine.
It is, yeah.
And it seems painful for me to, do you know how many homes that I haven't opened? That I just never have, I may go and I'll check in with her, I say, yes, I bought an accountability partner or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, accountability helps a lot. Having a therapist helps.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And what is this, now let me shift gears, tell me a bit about that, because I imagine there's a large part of coaching and accountability in
the owners that teaches them this process of how to get it created, get your plan created, do your business development, have a process to actually, instead of relying on referrals and word of mouth and your hope, sell, because people don't buy this. But one of the things, probably the most important part of it, but people don't buy that, right? They want to buy the product.
Right.
They don't want to buy the accountability. But once they're in there, they're like, I'm getting it done.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, look, I can tell you as a guy who has a stack of 17 calendars and planners.
I love those.
Still haven't.
You could use
Which one? On Google?
Google, yeah. Scheduling my exercise time.
So let's go to cycling. Let's talk a little bit about that. How
So it depends on sort of the business, because those two things, of course, take precedence. So right now, I get up early and I work, and then I get ready for school and off to school and everything, and then I go and ride. So I'm usually riding between 8:15 and 8:30, and then I get my ride in with my coach. I have a coach for that.
Okay.
And then I go back to work. So, but sometimes, depending on where things are, it might be noon, it might be 5 o'clock in the morning. It just depends. It's the routine changes. It shifts.
How many times a week?
5.
Do you ride? Five days a week? Okay. So you're able to be flexible if the routine has to change, if you can't do between 8:15 and 8:30.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the advantage of owning a business, is I can be flexible. That's a lot harder for somebody who doesn't own a business, for sure. But it's also the flexibility I'm trying to build for my team too. If they want to go work out at 9 o'clock in the morning, your work's done, so be it.
Are you hiring? because I want to do that. I want to get out. I'm thinking you, me on a tandem bicycle.
I love it.
Just doing
Let's
some
do
conference,
it. Yeah.
some work,
Awesome.
that kind of thing.
I love it.
All right. How can I find out about like if I'm an author who's been or aspiring author who's been procrastinating on writing a book for about 15 years? How do I get involved? How do I get your help?
Oh man, I've been procrastinating a novel too. So.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Is it a murder mystery?
No, it's not.
No.
Is yours a murder mystery?
I can't talk about it. I don't want to talk about it right now. But since you brought that up, hi, I'm Tim Washer. I'm writing a murder mystery right now. Would you be in it? We bring back your character that you played in Bones.
I love it. Yes.
But you know all the rules on how to hide the crime.
I love
and
it.
You commit it.
Yes.
Think
and I'm
about it.
committed. Okay.
And you will be committed. No, you commit the crime.
Oh.
We open up on a chalk outline. There's a chalk outline and a tri-bicycle right over here, okay?
Okay. Oh, does that mean I killed a kid?
Yeah. No. I don't know. Well, can we go to a commercial break while we work this out? We bring in the attorneys and make sure everything's clear.
Right. Okay,
Hey, what are you speaking on here at Content Marketing World?
I am actually talking about how.
I want to know, we're all about building content marketing and improving content marketing, helping people create more content.
He's setting me up.
Yes.
I am talking about how to grow your agency without more content.
Okay, we're going to have to cut and go back. What did you just say? Can you add that brake sound effect? Okay, tell us a little bit about this, because I'm thrown.
Sure, I mean, and I'm a great example of this because I'm the queen of content. I love to create content. It's my, if I could just do that, that's what I would do. So, but we all think, okay, well, we have to do blog posts and podcasts and videos and live streaming, and we have to do all of this stuff. And it turns out that we don't have to do all of that stuff. We just have to do one thing really, really well.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking
Yes.
about.
Okay. That actually lines up Joe Polizzi's keynote. He closed on the 7th law, which is just say no.
Yep.
And it's right in line with that.
Yep.
It's like, and then earlier on he said, you know, find out what you do great.
Yes.
You know, what you do very well.
Yes.
Do that.
Do that.
And then get rid of the stuff that you don't do all that well. And the challenges in the corporate world so often, and the agency world is, hey, we need more. We got to get on. We need. Oh, Snapchat.
Yep.
Let's do a Snapchat thing.
Yep.
You know, let's do a campaign.
Yeah.
And that is, you know, just like cycling. It's a discipline you have to build. And Joe talked a lot about, you know, the internal selling that has to be done.
Yep.
On how you need to. And so is that part of kind of the work that you do? Is helping people, you know, one, how to build that discipline on what to say no to, and then how to also communicate that internally?
Yeah, and really also to figure out what it is that you're good at. I mean, I was here at this conference, I want to say 3 years ago now, and I met the chief marketing officer at Libsyn, and he said to me, you know, women represent less than 1% of podcast hosts. And I thought, well, shoot, I should podcast. And so we launched the podcast, and we have one, but I hate doing it. It's not my favorite thing.
Really?
Yeah, I don't enjoy it.
But you still do it.
We still do it.
You still do it.
Of course.
Have you thought about just recording it when you're out cycling with your coach?
I feel like that would not be good for the PR industry, but that's a good idea
Just
in general.
Kick the idea around
Yeah.
a bit. What, and how, okay, so
I
how
think
do
there
we...
would just be a lot of swearing and I hate yous. Why are you doing this to me?
Yes. All right, that's the title right there,
Yeah.
I think. Yes, I like that a lot. How can we find you and your podcast and learn more about your mastermind?
Spinsucks.com.
Okay, very good. It's all there.
It's all
right.
there.
Jenny Dietrich, thank you so much for being with us. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. We have some valuable cash prizes for you. I
Awesome.
think we do. You know what? It's a washer and dryer set, he said. What is it?
Is it a Maytag?
No, it's a 82 Impala.
Oh, well.
So it's in the shop right now. When can we get that out? We'll
What-
get you.
is it
we're gonna get
red?
you- We're
Is
getting
it
you
red?
an Uber. We can have it painted red.
Awesome, thank
Mostly
you.
red. Okay.
Mostly
It's
red.
more of a rust color, if you will. So, but with a little primer, you'll be good.
You know, you remember on Sesame Street, the woman that sat in the big chair because she couldn't sit? That's what I feel like in this chair. I can't
Are you
touch
talking
the
about Lily
ground.
Tomlin?
Yes.
I love Lily Tomlin.
Wasn't she great?
Yes, yes. And
Sesame
I
Street.
saw her live doing that bit.
Did you really?
That's right.
Yeah.
And she's here after you, as a matter of fact, I think. Is she coming on? I think she's here after you. So, hey, I know you're speaking here shortly.
I am.
So
I am.
thanks for joining us, and
my pleasure.
break a leg.
Thank you.
On speaking, not in your writing.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you. And scene. Hey, thanks for joining us again on Content Marketing World Chatter. I'm Tim, here speaking with Biff Malibu.
You.
Yeah, you
Yes,
shouldn't have told
also
me that.
known as
Lee Odin.
That's right.
It's O-D-D-E-N. The second D is silent. It's Odin. But he was just telling me about his alter ego, Biff Malibu. Let's talk about Biff. Let's get into this first. When did Biff come up?
Libations and Love Connection way back when, and
Yeah.
there was a guy on there with that name, and thought,
Oh, there was like a contestant.
a contestant was on that show, and his name was Biff Malibu, and I thought, boy, what a fun name to use when I'm out cavorting and doing the things you do when you're in college at night.
Right. I got it. Now, have you published anything under that name?
No, man, this is before digital. I'm so old. It's
Okay, way
no.
before digital.
Yeah.
All right, so you lived part of your life as Biff Malibu.
a moment, a glimpse.
A moment. Went to the military under that name, or
no. It was
okay.
Yeah.
And then founded Top Rank Marketing.
Yes, actually, Susan Michukanis started a public relations firm, and I joined after having been at a web dev marketing agency, and as an employee, and then I became a partner, and then after a few years, we switched spots. I became the CEO, and she's president.
Okay.
Which was the greatest thing because she can actually run the company in an efficient and effective way.
So look, and now Forrester just recently started this new B2B agency list, the top B2B agencies.
Yes.
And Top Rank was on the first list that came out.
Yes. It was what a great way to be recognized.
Yeah.
Just by Forrester listing the top B2B marketing agencies in the country, some of the world, and one of the neat things about it is our specialty is B2B influence and content, working with influencers, and we've been doing that for a really long time. We were the only agency included that was listed with B2B influencer marketing credentials, which is pretty cool.
Look, tell me about that. There's some people are still kind of questioning the lifespan of influencer marketing. Right?
Sure.
And tell me why you see this is still a powerful way to
I think influencer marketing is powerful because of influence itself, not about the people. Influence has always been a factor in being persuasive, being effective as a communicator, as a marketer, and really being able to tap into the dynamics of that, the psychology and sociology of it, I think is something that is everlasting, it's evergreen. So while there are trends in terms of tactics that are come and go, there's this consumerization of B2B, like B2C influencers are misbehaving and fake followers and all that crap.
Right.
And some of that's leaking over into B2B, but I think that'll reconcile a little bit and kind of clean itself out. And in the future, brands are going to be looking at influence as a really key component of their holistic marketing strategy, internally and externally.
Well, and probably I think some of that came, B2B was bitten a little bit when, because of so many B2B brands investing in the Fire Festival.
Yeah, I saw some enterprise software companies really left high and dry.
A lot of VRP, a lot of CRM.
The peanut butter sandwiches and the dust and the tents and everything. Yeah, it was a fiasco.
But some of those influencers, that was all about an influencer launch, and that's kind of that house of cards. I think what gives some of this category a bad name is that there are people who will just go out and they'll take their sexy photos, out on the boat and stuff, and become an influencer. And
well, a lot of people do. When they think of influencer marketing, they think of a Kardashian, or some people thinking of someone like Batty Winkle, a 90-year-old woman who wears hip-hop clothes and now has her own makeup line on Sephora, versus someone like Tamara McCleary interviewing an executive at Dell about the right IT infrastructure for doing edge computing, right? And that's really what it's about in B2B.
Right. We did some of that. We did some of that without knowing it. When I was at Cisco, we produced this documentary. We interviewed a guy named Steven Shepard, who was a consultant for us, and it was just because he was a really good storyteller. Yeah. So I had this plan of, and we were kind of doing like the history of telecom, but we started off interviewing him, and he was such a good storyteller. We're like, dude, this is our documentary. Let's do this. Well, as it turns out, Steve is also a keynote speaker at all the big, Mobile World Congress, all the big telecom places. And so, he would end up sharing that a bit. He'd show clips of the documentary and whatnot. Yeah. And I think when you do, like what Top Rank does, when you bring in people who are really connected in the business, and they're authors, and they're bloggers, and they have a following, but they have competency and
Right.
expertise.
And that is one of the big differences between B2C and B2B influencers, is that in B2B you actually have to have domain expertise. You actually have to be knowledgeable and have a depth of that expertise in what it is that you're influential about. But it's also important to have a network, right, for distribution and a place to publish your content. It's great to have a personality, and that's less common in B2B. To have charisma.
Have you found any personalities in B2B?
Oh,
There's two.
Yeah, well, lack of personality is a form of personality, I suppose. And the good thing is that we figured out ways to coach folks that have that domain expertise and an active following, but they're not necessarily used to being social,
Yeah.
and coaching them in how to activate them and to pull out the best of what they have to share in a way that's very promotable. And many of them start to open up a little bit after we show them how to do it.
So how do you bring this into play with a brand that's looking to, they have an announcement coming up, right?
Sure.
Or they need to grow awareness in a certain area. How does that play?
Right, so before, in the planning stages, we'll look at the topics that are important around the announcement and how it affects customers and how customers will think of that news, how it'll affect or change their lives. And those topics are then what we want to be influential about. We'll use those keywords or topics to go ahead and search our network or using influencer marketing software to find who is influential around those topics, who's publishing content, who self-identifies as around that topic, whose audience is actually activated around that topic. And so we find those people who are trusted voices with an active community, and we invite them to collaborate on content, give their opinion about the announcement, and so we co-create content with them in concert with brand messaging. So now instead of people just ignoring the press release, as you will do, we actually have storytelling that, like in your case, with Cisco, happening with these different voices, and you have this intersection of one or two or three or four influencers talking about this topic, and those audiences intersect and cross, and they intersect across channels too, so that your customer is hearing this credible message, not only from the brand, but also from people that they trust in different channels. And that all adds up to yes. That all adds up to nurture and ultimately conversion.
Yep. Is there a case you can tell us about that comes to mind that you're allowed to talk about?
Yeah, sure. There's a IT service management company called Sherwell Software that was brand new to influencer marketing. So what do you do when you have no network connections? So what we did is we identified people who, there was a report coming out, the future of IT service management or something like that. So we found people who were influential around that idea, and we just published a list. Here's the top 25 people who are influential around this topic, and we honored them. After we published that, we then invited some of them to contribute to an ebook where they could share their domain expertise. And so they were happy and warm to the idea because we already gave them exposure and were willing to contribute. And because we did a lot of research on what the customers cared about, what the sources of influence were for the customers around content types and formats and channels and that sort of thing, as well as the influencer messages, the resulting ebook campaign, this one campaign, it's very unusual that this would happen, but that one campaign represented 21% of all sales pipeline for the entire year. And the vast majority of social shares, all that social traffic that came into that asset was because of the influencers sharing it. They were so proud to be a part of this thing that made them look good, that it became successful as a result.
Yeah, and people want to read it because they're learning something. They're getting something out of the content.
Utility is key. Utility is key. Personality is key. Relevance is obviously key. And at the end of the day, it's got to be something that inspires people.
Yeah. You guys do that well. So look, how do we find out more about you and Top Rank Marketing?
Well, you can certainly go to marketingblog.com, where my team has been publishing every day during the week for many, many, many years. In fact, I think we're 14, 15, 16 years old, something. It's a very old blog. But also at toprankmarketing.com.
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 Awesome. Lee Oden, thank you for being with us, sir.
Thank you, Tim.
We appreciate it, brother. All right. All right. Cut that in post. No high fives. Hey, welcome back. I'm Tim Washer, and today we are meeting with Joe Polizzi,
You have to-
content manager of Penton Media. Wait, this is who?
That's old.
I think the bio's old. We have an old bio on you. Are you still at Penton? I apologize.
That was 20 years ago.
20 years ago to the day.
20 years ago, almost.
Let me tell you this, sir. Law number 7 is just say no, and you should have taken your own advice when you said yes to this interview. Okay, because this is going to be a big mistake for you.
We did this last year, if I remember correctly, and I remember how horrible of an experience it was. But you know how time goes when something really bad happens to you, and then there's time, and you forget how bad it was. But then here I am.
Here you are, feeling the pain all over again. Yeah, and 10 minutes is going to seem like 2 hours, ladies and gentlemen.
It already feels like 2 hours, actually.
I want to dig into the rumors first. Is it true that you and Pam are now living off of a 1,200-foot yacht off the coast of Cyprus?
Oh no, we actually bought a tiny house.
A tiny house.
It's a sub tiny house because it's kind of half of a tiny house. We're really going with the whole minimalistic thing.
Okay.
Yeah, but to do that, we didn't know where to put our 2 kids who are junior and senior now. So basically, they're outside camping all the time. But we thought it was a great experience for them.
Yes, and they're going to think it's a great experience because one of them's eaten by a bear. Okay, but let's not worry about that. Look, I want to get into something you said in your keynote last year.
Yes.
Okay. You said when Mike kisses you, he's not doing anything else.
Oh, you remember that?
I do remember that.
Yes,
and I want to dig into that. Was that an Orson Welles book? I think that book's on sale now.
That was from Stranger in a Strange Land, Robert Heinlein. My favorite book. You knew this, right?
Yes.
Stranger in a Strange Land. I totally recommend it. There's a portion in the book because the whole idea was talking about focus and how if we really want to do great things, we have to be focused. And I unfortunately picked out the section of the book where Mike, the main character, was kissing somebody else,
and it came back to haunt
I didn't think it was going to go that way on stage when I'm talking, kissing Mike, but
I was thinking of you and Michael Landon at the time.
Who cares anymore? It's all good. Everything's good.
Let's accept each other.
Yeah, that's it.
Where they are.
Exactly. Where they are. I accept you.
And we'll see how the interview goes before I make a commitment on acceptance. So, this new keynote, love that.
Did you watch it?
Yes.
Did you like it? That's the first time I've given that keynote ever.
Pam told me that.
Yeah.
Pam told me it was the first one, the first time to do that, and I love it. And I loved actually. Jenny Dietrich was here earlier this morning, and we talked about this idea of like, look, you need to focus on the stuff you do really well, and then kill off the stuff you're just. And also we talked about too, the challenges you have of getting all these requests of, hey, let's do a podcast. We need a new campaign.
We need to do everything.
So how are you? Look, this stuff needs to be. I mean, everybody needs to get on board with this.
Well, we've been doing this for a long time. It's so tempting because we can do all these things.
Yeah.
Oh, let's do a podcast. Let's do a video series. Let's do an e-newsletter, a blog, be on every social channel. There was a time, 7-8 years ago, we said we had to be on every social channel. And then we were like, oh, no, we don't. But we stayed on all those channels. We kept doing all that stuff. And you're getting requests from the entire company to create content on every channel. But people don't realize that is just a path to failure. It never, if you look at all the great, not only media brands, but let's just look at the best content marketing examples that have ever been. They've all, when you go from Red Bull down, they all started by doing one thing really well.
Yeah.
We do a magazine. We do a podcast, and then you build that audience. And then once you build that loyal audience, then you can start to diversify. And I grew up in publishing media, and you think, oh, okay, well, there's a publishing brand, and they have all these events, and they have podcasts, and they have a magazine, and whatever. And you think that they just started that way. None of them did. They all started by doing one thing really well, build the audience, and then once the audience accepts you and they're loyal, then they'll start to engage in other things. Nobody does this. Everybody says, oh, we got to do all of it at the same time, and I feel bad. And I know how tough it is to say no, but we absolutely have to stop just wasting everyone's time with this content that nobody's paying attention to, that we're hooking our job onto, and it's just sad.
So what's your plan? How are you going to change things with this?
How am I going to change people from doing
with
that?
this message? How are you getting this out there?
Well, I've written 5 books, and I've mentioned it in every one. And Robert and I do a podcast. I've got an e-newsletter out there, and nobody pays attention to it. Obviously, nobody's reading the books. Nobody, because people are, and I know why. Because somebody asks you, the chief marketing officer or VP of sales says, can you do this? And we can. It's not that we can't, we shouldn't.
Right.
And we don't want to say no. Because we feel that our job is in jeopardy, and it might be, and that's the problem, and that's why we have to educate them and say, look, you're going to ask me to do this video series that tags along with the podcast, but it's going to fail, and here's why. You don't know that because you're not in content marketing.
Right. And that's what you're talking about, just the need is in internal communications.
Yeah.
Really trying to get the suits who are coming down with these
Before
requests.
everything.
Yeah.
If you talk to most of the people that are here at Content Marketing World, I would say the majority don't have internal content programs for their own sake, and they all have to, because I've seen, I don't know how many big brands I've been into that are doing fantastically well. They're building an audience, everything's working, they're down the right path, and then, all of a sudden, the whole program's done. Well, why is that? We're getting results. Sorry, somebody who just joined, some CMO who has to change everything, didn't know what you were doing, and now it's gone. It became an ad program. Sorry, you're done.
Right. You got to get the word out. Look, the podcast, you and Robert are back.
We are.
I remember we recorded one in Sydney, Australia, a few years back.
That's right.
You remember that?
That's
over
right.
probably a few too many glasses of wine.
You were one of the few people that have actually been on that podcast.
That was a fun time, man. That was a fun time.
Yeah, unfortunately, that was our worst episode ever. But it was fun.
Thank you.
Because I've learned, and you have to learn the hard way sometimes. I learned that you're not supposed to drink before you do a podcast.
Yes, or during.
But I do remember we had a great time that night.
Look, the three of us had fun. And who cares about the audience? The audience is dead. That's our point here at Content Marketing World. If you leave 2019 with one thought.
That's exactly right.
That's what is start drinking during your podcast.
Yeah, alcohol
That's from Joe.
is the key to
Straight.
everything, I guess.
Hey, tell me about what's going on with the Orange Effect.
Thank you. Yes, so Orange Effect Foundation, 5 years old now, although my wife and I have been working on the cause for a long time. Basically, we help families who have children with speech disorders. Many of them are on the autism spectrum that can't afford speech therapy or technology, and we provide grants and scholarships so they can get that consistent speech therapy. And it's all about, if you identify a disorder, it's all about consistent, just like content marketing, frankly, consistent speech therapy over a long period of time. And we saw the effects that it had on our oldest son, Joshua, who's now 17 and looking at colleges, and he's doing fantastic. But if he wouldn't have got that early intervention speech therapy, I don't know, he wouldn't have been able to communicate like he can, and that was the frustration for him as a child, is we couldn't understand him, and he's very frustrated. And it doesn't have to be that way, but if a family is trying to decide between, should I feed my family or get speech therapy, they're going to choose food, they're going to choose survival. So we want to be that organization that helps them provide speech therapy. And right now I think 180 kids in 28 states that we provided funding for, and it's just it's great, but we have so much work to do, and so we're trying to fund 60 kids right now for the next few months.
All right, so how can we find out more about the Orange Effect, and how can we get involved? So how can somebody's just hearing about this now, how can we say, look, I want to be part of changing kids' lives? So how do we do that?
It's funny, because just today we just launched this program. If you go to bit.ly.com/OEF60, /OEF60, or you can go to theorangeeffect.org, but the OEF60 short link will take you to the video and tell everybody about what we're doing and how we're trying to fund 60 children for the next year. And thank you very much. And it's amazing. There's so much money going into, especially great organizations like Autism Speaks and other things, but they mostly focus on research and advocacy.
Right.
And what do you do about the kids that need speech therapy now? And there's not enough organizations like Orange Effect doing that. So I hope more of them happen, or we get more funding. Yeah,
and part of that's just understanding the impact that early coaching can have early in their life.
2 to 7. Ages 2 to 7 are so critical. And Joshua started at age 2. So when we went into an appointment with the doctor, and they tested Joshua, he was almost exactly 2 years, and they said, I'm sorry, Joshua will never go to a regular school. He'll never communicate like other kids. And as parents, we're devastated. We don't know anything about this thing. And luckily, my wife Pam was like, well, that ain't gonna work. We're gonna get him into speech and play therapy right now. And 5 days a week. He was in therapy sometimes multiple times a day, and thank God
Yeah.
it all worked out. But
Yeah.
a lot of kids don't get that opportunity,
Right.
so we're trying to fill the gap.
Yeah. Well, good deal, man. Well,
Yeah.
blessings to you on that program, brother.
thank you.
Hey, thanks for being with. Thanks for stopping by Content Marketing World.
This hasn't been as horrible as I thought it would be. I'd love to come back next year.
All right. Well, I'm not making any commitments. I can't make any commitments, but we'll consider you. Okay. You fill out an application. We'll get it.
Okay,
Doris,
good.
can you
I
get him
wanna
an
be-
application?
I want to be on the list.
We got you,
Sure.
brother. Thank you, man.
Thanks,
Blessings
Tim.
to you, dude.
Appreciate it.
All right.
You got it.
Hey, welcome back to the feedback show. That's what we're calling it now. To Content Marketing World Chatter. Sorry, we got a little sound bouncing off here. Did you hear that?
Yes, I did.
So it wasn't just me.
No.
Because I hear a couple of voices during the day. Now, one of them's Tony, our producer, and that's
Right.
that's in here. But he's always watching, as he said. Chris White, Capital One.
That's right.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, listen, you're here. You're speaking tomorrow.
Correct.
What's your topic?
Why you should date your audience.
Why?
It sounds weird. I think the title is actually why you should treat your audience like you're dating them.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Wasn't it? I think the original title you submitted was Tinder for Content Marketing.
Something like that.
That's
yeah.
right. And
then that got axed
No.
by our PR team.
They said no.
That's
They
right.
Said no. So you cleaned it up a bit.
It did.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about dating
Yeah.
in this scenario. Can we keep it in here, please?
Sure.
Is that fair? What's the first step?
Well, so the whole thing is like an analogy of,
Dating.
yes. So if I asked everybody in this conference who
Wait.
99% of them never met.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just sat on my mic. Pick it up again. I'm not kidding.
Okay.
All right.
So if I asked everybody in this conference, 99% of them have never met before, if they would marry me, nobody would say yes because they don't
Wait a
know who I
minute.
am.
Stop right there. I'm gonna
Yeah.
stop you right there. You're being a little too hard on yourself, Chris.
I
Can
appreciate it.
we get a line of folks together and let's
That's
just
right.
do some sampling? Okay, go ahead.
But a lot of times our advertising, our marketing is doing just that. We're sending these product ads or whatever we're selling straight to a cold audience. That's very analogous to saying, I just met you, you want to marry me. So the whole session is around, if you take that mindset where it's like people are still humans, then it changes your perception of how you should be marketing. Maybe the cold product ad isn't the way to go. Maybe you should start out with something more relevant and date them. So that's the kind of the whole theme of tomorrow's session.
Gotcha. And what's the first step on dating? How do you? Because look, let's stay in the analogy here.
Sure.
Dating, a lot of it's about, especially nowadays with all this online stuff. You have to build trust. You have to.
That's right.
You do have to open up a bit and let people see who you really are.
Right.
Because I think audience. Look, I learned this in stand-up comedy. Audiences are incredibly sophisticated. I lost my mic again. How about now? Is this now? Or not? Hang on. Please hold.
It's okay.
We'll get back to dating. Would you go out and ask a few people if they would marry you?
I don't know. I was thinking about it tomorrow.
Yeah. Look, it's on. No, it is on. Please hold. Put it under control. But you can't hear me. You talk.
All right.
Give me.
Yeah, so apparently we're having some mic
still
problems.
airing, right? Tony? Okay. Oh. Are we?
Let me just start going.
Great. So we're still going?
This is going to be a nice one.
All right. Will you continue, please, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think to your original question of like, how does the dating start? I think you got to know who you're talking to or who's your type, using the analogy.
Right.
And I think that whittles down the noise of just like, if you know that this is your target audience, it's easier for you to become more relevant to them because you know what makes them tick, you know what they like. And then over time, you can build up that trust, that relationship. And you do that through like all of the content marketing we talk about, but it also comes into like the timing of when do you ask for that second date? When do you actually want to try to get them to convert or buy your product or sign on to your service? But I think the key is kind of centering down on who your target is and then treating them like a human, not assuming that because they're in your target audience, they're ready to convert and or marry you right away.
So how will you cover some areas on like how you determine who your target is?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So I've got this kind of sexy one-liner that's 10% of 40 is more than 4% of 100. And
Okay, wait.
math-wise, it's the same.
I was told there'd be no math on this interview.
I know. Obviously, 10% of 40 is 4 of 100 is also 4. But
Right.
the concept is, just because you're whittling down your target to that 40, doesn't mean you're missing out on the 60. It actually enables you to get more specific, then create more relevant content, so that you're not missing out. You don't have to feel like you're missing out on the majority of your target.
Now look, that's a big, sadly, That's a big mind shift change, I think, because we think of the pie chart. I want all of it.
I want all of it.
And it's really difficult to change people's opinions, I think, and help them understand the value of, like, let's be meaningful. Let's really be meaningful to a small group of people, you know, a subsection, you know, and I think that's part of it. Joe Pulizzi talked about this a bit in his keynote about, it comes down to focus, a lot of it, and saying no, and really the internal communications, how we do it, need to do a better job internally of communicating and getting our marketing people on board to say, look, there's value in being a little bit more specific here.
Absolutely. And then I think there's this other component where the more specific you can get, that enables your creative or the message you're saying to be very almost alienating, but in a positive way, where it's like if I'm talking to people that love dogs, I can say, you know, something about German Shepherds without making the cat people mad, because you're okay with being very specific to that, like, very small niche audience.
Right. Well, I do, look, one thing I learned from stand-up comedy is that when I first started writing, you know, I would, I have a joke, and then I'd say, let me make this a little bit more general. Let me just generalize some of the truth here.
Yeah.
I mean, it was still true, but I would generalize some of the specifics so it applies to more people. And I learned that's the exact wrong thing to do.
Right.
Because the more specific you make your story, the more universally it applies, because, or at least what I feel is that the truth resonates in those details that you get.
Absolutely.
You know, people feel that and they believe that when you get very specific about things. And but it is still hard to look, unless you've been up there on stage and bombed a few times, you know, and experienced it. I think it's hard for people to get that message that, and there's a temptation of let's market to everybody.
Right, and as soon as you start generalizing it, you make all these compromises on what you're saying, because you're trying to account for so many opinions or viewpoints, or to try to resonate with everybody. And the reality is, the wider that focus is, it's the less relevant you become to everybody.
Right.
So it's the inverse effect of what you're trying to compensate for.
Yes. Now, what time is your session tomorrow?
It's at 10:15 tomorrow.
10:15. Now, are you gonna talk a little bit about some of that process as well?
Absolutely.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
Right. And do you have is there anything you have online that we could read, like on a blog post or anything where you cover some of this as well?
Not necessarily on Capital One's public properties. It's kind of like we're talking about stuff under the hood.
Right.
It's ironic though, because I wrote a post about that very title of my session back in 2017 on LinkedIn.
Oh, really?
And I've probably presented this session 3 or 4 times now, and I've just, it's very meta. I'm repurposing that content for other like context. And so on my LinkedIn, I've got like a couple series where it talks about, you know, being more specific, or, you know, that 10% of 40 is the way to break through all the clutter in today's marketing.
So how can we find that? Can we find you just at Chris White, Capital One, LinkedIn? Is that where we go?
That's pretty much it.
And
one
we
of
can
the
dig
top
through
guys up there.
and find that blog post.
Yeah.
Luke, would you also mind retweeting or tweeting us a link after this to that blog post? And, you know, just with the Content Marketing World hashtag?
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right.
Very good. Listen, anything else you'd like to cover on the things that you're working on there at the shop in DC?
I think, you know, one of the key things that I'm going to talk about is we see like 10,000 ads a day. And so the key isn't quality or quantity. The key is relevancy. And quality can be very subjective. I've got this example where I had a leak on a faucet in my kitchen, and I YouTubed how to fix a faucet. The first thing that comes up is this piece of crap video, 14 minutes long, shot on a cell phone, and you would have thought I was watching Titanic for the first time. I was like enthralled in it because it was super relevant for me in that moment. It was the guy walking through how to fix this faucet. And so if you look at it at face value, it's a terrible video.
Right.
The guy even puts the phone down to fix the faucet. It's terrible. But all the comments were like, this is amazing. You just helped me fix my faucet. And so I think honing in on that relevancy, kind of pair that with being very specific in who your target is, and that allows you to clear mentally of just like, this is what I'm going after, and I have permission to go do that.
That's right. So if you're relevant and can solve my problem, I'll sift through a bunch of other issues you have with your content.
That's right.
And hang tight on that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's
man.
awesome. Hey, listen, thank you for joining us, Chris. I appreciate
for
it.
having
and
me.
and we'll check out your post, your LinkedIn post, and dig into this a bit more. And break a leg tomorrow. I hope it goes well.
you.
All right, take care.
Thanks for having me.